AOC is claiming that some MAGA voters now regret voting for President Trump and may be ready to back the DNC in 2028. But Karoline Leavitt isn't buying it. She says AOC is completely wrong, and she just fired back with one of the most scorching clapbacks of the year. As always, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. That's what AOC claimed when she took to social media. According to her, many Trump voters support him simply because they spend all day watching Fox News, absorbing talking points without thinking for themselves. In her view, it couldn't possibly have anything to do with the economic pressure people felt under Biden's soaring grocery bills, higher gas prices, or rent suddenly becoming unaffordable. No, she dismisses all of that. She also refuses to believe that voters were pushed toward Trump by the flood of woke policies coming out of the Biden administration, policies many Americans see as disconnected from everyday reality. To AOC, it all just media brainwashing, nothing more. But that smug explanation didn't go unanswered. Karoline Leavitt caught wind of AOC comments, and she wasn't about to let them slide. What followed was a fiery, no-nonsense response that flipped AOC narrative on its head and called out the arrogance behind it. And that much is undeniably true. The DNC has been in turmoil ever since Trump announced his intention to run for president again. From that point forward, it's been one scramble after another, with clear strategy giving way to uncertainty. It helps explain the non-stop stream of accusations thrown his way, followed by high-profile investigations and trials that promised bombshell revelations but ultimately produced little. It also explains the Russia collusion narrative that dominated headlines for years, one that many Republicans argue never delivered the evidence Democrats claimed it would. Add to that the constant barrage of insults and derogatory labels, as if name-calling could stand in for a winning message. And yet, despite everything, the scandals, the courtrooms, the media firestorms, nothing seems to stick. Time and again, these attacks have failed to fracture Trump's base or slow his momentum. If anything, they've only hardened his support and revealed just how shaken his opponents truly are. Karoline Leavitt openly criticizes Democratic Party leaders for losing control of their own base. According to her, the party has shifted so far to the left that even longtime power players, like Chuck Schumer, now appear out of sync with the activists they once led. She argues that the most extreme voices are now driving the party direction. Instead of elected leaders setting the agenda, it's the loudest and most radical figures online and in the streets who are calling the shots. Leavitt claims Democratic leaders are being pushed aside in real time because they're no longer viewed as woke enough by their own supporters. One poorly chosen phrase or moment of moderation, and they're suddenly labeled sellouts or traitors. In her view, this internal disorder reveals a party turning on itself, consumed by ideological purity tests rather than focused on governing. As Democrats continue to fight among themselves, Leavitt says voters are paying attention and many are quietly tuning out a party that no longer seems to know who it represents. Karoline Leavitt brings a knife to a stone fight, completely dismantling AOC claim that MAGA supporters somehow regret voting for Donald Trump. She doesn't just brush the argument aside, she demands proof. Real names, real numbers, real evidence. And, she suggests, that proof isn't coming anytime soon. Instead of relying on vague anecdotes and social media fantasies, Leavitt reminds AOC and the entire Democratic Party why so many Americans rallied behind Trump in the first place. It wasn't an accident. It was a reaction. A reaction to aggressive woke policies pushed by the DNC that left everyday voters shaking their heads. Many Americans weren't on board with men competing in women's sports, the push for medical transitions for minors, or the party's steady drift toward open socialism. Leavitt warns that ignoring these concerns doesn't make them disappear, it only drives more voters away. And if Democrats continue doubling down, she argues, the political consequences could be severe. Leavitt is right, and this is the part Democrats still refuse to grasp. Trump didn't win by chasing social media applause or elite approval. He spoke directly to middle America, to undecided voters, to people who felt ignored, talked down to, and squeezed from every direction. He tapped into the frustrations of working-class Americans worried about jobs, rising prices, safety, and stability, and he did it in language they actually recognized. Meanwhile, Harris and the DNC focused their messaging on coastal elites, corporate donors, and the loudest woke voices online. Instead of bread and butter issues, voters were met with lectures, labels, and moral posturing. That disconnect mattered. When everyday Americans felt dismissed or mocked, Trump made them feel seen and heard, even if they didn't agree with him on everything. In the end, elections aren't won through virtue signaling or carefully curated talking points. They're won by connecting with real people living real lives. And that connection is exactly where Trump succeeded and where the DNC fell short. Karoline Leavitt also takes aim at Gavin Newsom, calling out what she sees as peak political hypocrisy. She criticizes Newsom for constantly lecturing Americans about saving the planet, while presiding over one of the highest energy cost environments in the country. According to Leavitt, it's easy to preach climate virtue from a podium, while everyday families are stuck paying outrageous electricity and gas bills just to keep the lights on. She argues that Newsom's green agenda may sound noble in theory but collapses in practice, especially for working-class Californians who can't afford solar panels, electric vehicles, or other luxury alternatives. Instead of making life more sustainable, she says these policies are making it more expensive and less livable. Leavitt frames it as a classic case of elite disconnect, leaders pushing feel-good environmental slogans while regular people shoulder the financial burden. In her view, Californians aren't rejecting environmental responsibility, they're rejecting leaders who prioritize ideology over affordability and common sense. Karoline argues she's right, and the evidence is hard to ignore. Families and businesses are leaving California in growing numbers because they can no longer withstand the crushing taxes, endless regulations, and suffocating bureaucracy. For small business owners in particular, it become a relentless uphill fight, with permits, compliance costs, and tax bills piling up until the numbers simply no longer add up. And through it all, Gavin Newsom doesn't seem especially concerned, at least in Karoline's view. Rather than easing the burden or reconsidering his approach, she says he's determined to double down, squeezing businesses even harder in pursuit of lofty goals and political optics. The outcome is predictable. Companies pack up and relocate to states with lower taxes, fewer obstacles, and a more business-friendly environment. Karoline frames it as a straightforward leadership failure. When jobs leave, communities suffer, and tax bases shrink, yet California leadership continues to act surprised by consequences many saw coming from the start. At some point, she argues, denial stops looking like leadership and starts looking like indifference. Yes, Karoline is essentially voicing what millions of Californians are already thinking. Gavin Newsom needs to stop chasing headlines and start focusing on what truly matters to the people living in his state. That means addressing the crushing cost of living that forces families into impossible choices every month. It means cutting back the bloated bureaucracy that slows progress, drives up costs, and strangles small businesses before they can grow. It means boosting reliable energy production instead of pushing policies that make power more expensive and less dependable. And above all, it means easing the tax burden that continues to push residents and employers out of California. Karoline's message is simple: leadership isn't about lofty rhetoric or grandstanding on national issues. It's about making life more affordable and sustainable for everyday people. Until Newsom prioritizes these basics, the exodus will continue and Californians will keep paying the price for political stubbornness. When you step back, the picture becomes clear. Democrats like AOC and Gavin Newsom keep offering excuses, narratives, and slogans, while voters are demanding results. Karoline Leavitt's message cuts through the noise. People didn't turn to Trump because of Fox News or misinformation, they did it because their lives became harder, more expensive, and less stable. The DNC obsession with woke purity tests, soaring taxes, and ideological crusades has left working Americans behind. Instead of listening, party leaders double down and act surprised when voters walk away. Until Democrats confront the real reasons people are fed up, no amount of spin will stop the political backlash that's already underway. And that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, Hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more content just like this.